The first bullet punched through Master Chief Garrett Holloway's shoulder before anyone even heard the shot. The round hit with a wet, meaty thump that echoed through the Montana pines like a thunderclap. Holloway, 58 years old, with 3 decades of combat experience carved into every line of his weathered face, went down hard. His body crumpled against a moss-covered log, blood already spreading across his tactical vest in a dark crimson bloom. Then the forest exploded. 8 rifles opened up simultaneously from positions 30 meters above the ground. The ancient pines of the ridge had become a killing ground, their thick branches transformed into sniper platforms, invisible from the forest floor. Rounds cracked through the air like angry hornets, shredding bark, punching through foliage, turning the peaceful wilderness into a maelstrom of lead and splintered wood. SEAL Team 7 scattered with the trained instinct of men who had survived ambushes before. They dove behind logs, pressed themselves into depressions in the earth, sought cover behind the massive trunks of trees that had stood for centuries. But cover meant nothing when the enemy held the high ground, when they could see everything and be seen by no one. Declan Mercer, the team's designated marksman, was bringing up his SR-25 rifle when the second volley found him. The round caught him square in the chest just below his armor plate, and he went down screaming. His rifle clattered away across the pine needles as both hands clutched at the wound, blood bubbling between his fingers with each desperate breath. A sucking chest wound, the kind that killed men in minutes if not treated immediately. Lieutenant Brennan Shaw pressed himself against a tree trunk, his mind racing through options that were disappearing faster than he could count them. He keyed his radio with hands that refused to shake despite everything happening around him. "Base, this is Sierra 7. We are in contact. Multiple snipers, elevated positions, at least 8 shooters. 2 urgent surgical casualties. Request immediate QRF and air support. I say again, we need everything you have right now." The response came back through a haze of static, and every word made the situation worse. "Sierra 7, nearest QRF is 45 minutes out. Air assets are grounded due to weather system moving through the mountains. Medical evacuation is not available at this time. Recommend you break contact and move to extraction point Delta." 45 minutes. Mercer would bleed out in 15. Holloway needed surgery within 30. And breaking contact meant moving through a forest where enemy snipers had spent God knows how long setting up interlocking fields of fire. They would be picked off one by one, hunted like deer during rifle season. Shaw looked across the chaos at his team. Colt Hensley, 25 years old and still carrying that invincibility complex from surviving Bud S, was burning through magazines on full auto-firing, blind into the canopy above. Rounds sprayed uselessly into branches, and Sky hitting nothing, accomplishing nothing except announcing his position to every shooter up there. "Hensley, conserve your ammunition. You're wasting rounds." But Colt couldn't hear him, or wouldn't. Fear had taken hold, that primal terror that turned trained operators into panicked animals. He kept firing, kept screaming, kept making himself a target. Another round cracked past Shaw's head, close enough that he felt the pressure wave against his cheek. Close enough that he could smell the cordite. Close enough that he knew the next one might not miss. This was how it ended. This was how good men died. Pinned down in a forest 1,000 miles from anywhere that mattered, picked apart by enemies they couldn't see, waiting for help that wouldn't arrive in time. And that was when Shaw noticed her, Victoria Ashford, the quiet operator who had been with them for 6 months without firing a single combat shot. The woman half the team had dismissed as a passenger, a quota hire, a political appointment designed to check boxes rather than stack bodies. She had moved behind a fallen pine with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed, bringing up her MK-13 sniper rifle with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Shaw had never seen anyone move like that under fire. Not in 18 years of service, not in 3 combat deployments, not ever. Victoria's green eyes were scanning the canopy above with an intensity that seemed almost predatory. There was no fear in her expression, no panic, no uncertainty. Just focused precision that made Shaw suddenly realize he might be looking at someone very different from the woman he thought he knew. 6 months earlier, Victoria Ashford had walked into the Team 7 compound with a service record that read like a redacted novel. Gaps everywhere. Classified assignments that left blank spaces where experience should have been. Transfer orders signed by people whose names were blacked out with permanent marker. She was 29 years old, average height, with a lean build that spoke of years carrying heavy equipment over brutal terrain. Dark brown hair pulled back in a tight braid. Face weathered in that way of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. Not hard exactly, just seasoned, like leather that had seen use and gotten better for it. The team had welcomed her with the cautious respect they gave all new operators. SEALs didn't care about gender or background or politics. They cared about performance. Could you carry your weight? Could you do the job? Could you be trusted when bullets started flying? But Victoria never gave them a chance to find out. Mission after mission, she stayed quiet, competent but unremarkable. She pulled her weight during patrols, showed solid judgment during planning sessions, maintained her equipment with meticulous care. But she never took point, never volunteered for the hard jobs, never demonstrated any of the aggressive capability that defined the best operators in the community. Most damning of all, she never fired her weapon. Not once in 6 months of deployment. Not a single round expended in combat. Her rifle might as well have been a very expensive prop. Colt Hensley had started calling her the Mute behind her back. The nickname spread through the team like a virus, whispered in corners, laughed about during downtime. Some of the men wondered openly if she knew which end of the gun was which. Others speculated that she was some admiral's daughter protected from actual combat by connections that kept her safely behind the lines. Only Master Chief Garrett Holloway treated her differently. Holloway was the oldest member of the team by nearly 2 decades, a former Marine recon operator who had switched to Navy and gone through Buddhist at 28 when most men his age were starting families and settling into civilian careers. He had been doing this work since before half the team was born, and that experience had given him an eye for talent that the younger operators hadn't developed yet. He watched Victoria during training exercises, watched the way she moved, watched the way she handled her weapon, watched the way her eyes tracked movement and calculated distances and assessed threats with an efficiency that seemed almost unconscious. And he knew. 3 days before the Montana mission, Holloway had pulled Victoria aside after a briefing. They walked together to a quiet corner of the compound away from curious ears and prying eyes. "I know who you are," he said simply. Victoria's expression didn't change. "I'm Petty Officer Ashford, Master Chief, just like my orders say." "Your orders say a lot of things, but they don't say anything about Shadow Unit. They don't say anything about 87 solo operations. They don't say anything about the highest kill count in the history of counter-sniper operations." For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. She just looked at Holloway with those green eyes, assessing him the same way she assessed everything. Measuring, deciding. "How did you find out?" "I've got friends in places that don't officially exist. Asked around when I noticed how you move, how you watch, how you handle that rifle like it's an extension of your own body." Holloway paused. "The gaps in your service record aren't empty, Ashford. They're classified so high that asking about them almost got me in serious trouble, which told me everything I needed to know." "Then why haven't you told the others?" "Because you don't want me to, and I respect that." Holloway shifted his weight, favoring the knee that had been giving him trouble for the past decade. "What I don't understand is why. Why is the most lethal sniper in the United States military hiding on a line team pretending to be ordinary? Why haven't you fired a shot in 6 months?" Victoria was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of experiences that Holloway could only imagine. "Because for 2 years I was a weapon. Point me at a target and the target ceased to exist. That was my whole purpose, my whole identity. I killed people for a living, Master Chief. 87 missions. I stopped counting the bodies after the first year because the number got too heavy to carry. That's the job. Yes, it was, until it wasn't anymore." Victoria looked away toward the distant mountains that bordered the compound. There was a mission, a target, a woman. She was like me, a sniper on the other side, highly trained, highly effective, responsible for dozens of coalition casualties. "And you took her out?" "I did. And afterward, when we processed her belongings, I found photographs. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, waiting at home for a mother who was never coming back because I put a bullet through her chest at 800 meters. Holloway understood. Not the specifics maybe, but the weight, the cost, the accumulated burden that came from doing necessary work in an ugly world. She was the enemy. She was also a mother. She was also a person. And I killed her the same way I killed everyone else. Like I was swatting a fly. Like it meant nothing. Victoria's voice hardened. I requested transfer because I needed to remember what it meant to be part of something. To be a teammate instead of a weapon. To go 6 months without killing anyone and prove to myself that I could still be human. And have you proven it? Victoria met his eyes. I don't know yet. Ask me when this deployment is over. Holloway nodded slowly. He understood choices like that. He had made his own over the years. Decisions that kept him sane in a profession that destroyed sanity. Compromises that let him sleep at night when sleep should have been impossible. Here's what I know, he said. The team needs you. They just don't know it yet. When the time comes, and it will come, you're going to have to show them who you really are. And when that happens, I've got your back, no matter what. Why? Why would you do that for someone you barely know? Because I've been doing this for a lifetime, and I've learned to recognize the real ones. The quiet professionals who don't need to prove anything because they already know what they're capable of. The ones who wait patiently for the moment when their skills are actually needed, then execute with precision that makes everyone else look like amateurs. Holloway put a hand on her shoulder. Heavy, reassuring. The touch of a mentor who had guided young operators through crucibles they thought they couldn't survive. You're the real thing, Ashford. I've known it since the first week. Whatever happened before, whatever you're running from, whatever you're trying to prove to yourself when the time comes, I trust you. And I'll make damn sure everyone else trusts you too. Now that time had come. The forest echoed with gunfire and screaming. Mercer was bleeding out on the ground, Dr. Avery Brennan working frantically to keep him alive. Her hands moved with the desperate efficiency of someone who had kept men breathing in worse conditions than this, but the wound was bad. The blood was coming too fast. Holloway was propped against a log, his right shoulder, useless blood soaking through the bandage one of the team members had hastily applied. But his eyes were sharp, alert, taking in everything despite the pain that had to be overwhelming. Colt Hensley had finally stopped shooting his magazines, empty his rifle useless. He crouched behind a tree trunk chest, heaving fear written across his face in letters anyone could read. And somewhere above them, hidden in the ancient pines, 8 professional snipers waited to finish what they had started. Victoria moved behind her fallen log, bringing her MK-13 up to a shooting position with movements that flowed like water. The rifle was a .300 Winchester Magnum, capable of accurate fire out to 1,100 meters under ideal conditions. These conditions were far from ideal. Dense forest, multiple obstructions, elevated targets ranges, varying from 200 to 600 meters. But Victoria had made shots under worse conditions. Much worse. Her scope came up, and she began scanning the canopy with systematic precision. Most people looked for people. They searched for human shapes, for movement, for the obvious signs of someone trying to hide. Victoria looked for anomalies. A straight line in a world of curves, a shadow falling at the wrong angle, foliage moving against the direction of the wind, the geometry of man-made objects against organic growth, the things that didn't belong, the things that gave away even the most carefully concealed position. And she found them. 8 platforms scattered across 600 meters of forest. Professional construction built from branches and camouflage netting, nearly invisible from ground level. Nearly, but not quite invisible enough. She could see the edge of a boot on the nearest platform. Just the heel, maybe 2 inches, visible through a gap in foliage. 2 inches was enough. Victoria calculated the shot in milliseconds. Range 340 meters horizontal, 38 meters vertical, giving actual distance of 342 meters along the angle of fire. Wind minimal through the trees, maybe 3 miles per hour from the west, based on the movement of leaves at canopy level. Temperature approximately 55 degrees, humidity high, maybe 75%. The angle meant she needed to adjust her point of aim lower than a level shot at the same range. Her scope's reticle settled on a point 6 inches below where she had seen the boot. Not on the boot itself. That was cover. On the space where the body had to be based on the position of that boot. Her finger settled on the trigger with familiar certainty. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Because as she scanned the other positions, as she mapped the interlocking fields of fire, and calculated the patterns of movement and reconstructed the tactical thinking behind the ambush, Victoria realized something that made her blood run cold. She knew this setup. She had studied it in classified briefings, had seen photographs of the aftermath when similar ambushes had caught other units unprepared, had memorized the signature techniques of the man who designed them, Viktor Volkov, the Wolf, former Spetsnaz, 52 years old, the most dangerous sniper commander to emerge from the Russian special operations community in 3 decades. A ghost who had been operating in conflict zones for 20 years, training teams that killed with methodical precision, then vanishing before anyone could catch him. Victoria had hunted the Wolf for 2 years during her time with Shadow Unit. She had tracked his operations across 3 continents, had studied his methods until she could predict his moves almost before he made them, had gotten close enough to smell his cigarette smoke on one operation in Syria before he slipped away into the darkness. She had never seen his face, never gotten close enough to take the shot that would end his career permanently. But she had learned his patterns, his signature moves, his preferred techniques for turning terrain into a killing ground, and she recognized those techniques now. The interlocking fields of fire that left no blind spots, the elevated positions that maximized sight lines while minimizing vulnerability, the patient discipline of shooters who waited for perfect shots instead of spraying ammunition like amateurs, the calculated precision that had already wounded 2 operators in the first 30 seconds of contact. This was Volkov's work, his team, his operation. And suddenly Victoria understood something else, something that made her grip tighten on her rifle until her knuckles went white. This wasn't random. Volkov didn't do random. Every operation he ran had a purpose, a target, a reason. 2 years ago, Victoria's mentor had died, Captain Sullivan Graves, Sully, the man who had recruited her into Shadow Unit, the man who had trained her, pushed her, believed in her when she didn't believe in herself, the man who had made her into the weapon she had become. Sully had been hunting Volkov when he disappeared. His body had been found 3 weeks later, bearing the marks of extended interrogation. The photographs of what Volkov had done to him still haunted Victoria's nightmares. Before he died, Sully must have talked, must have given up information about Shadow Unit, about its operators, about Victoria herself. Volkov knew who she was, knew she had transferred to Team 7, knew she would be on this patrol in this forest on this day. This ambush wasn't designed to kill a random SEAL team. It was designed to draw her out. The realization should have terrified her, should have made her hesitate, second-guess, freeze up the way Hensley had frozen. Instead, it made her calm. Because if Volkov wanted to meet her, then she would give him what he wanted. She would show him exactly what Sully Graves had created, and then she would make him pay for what he had done. Victoria keyed her radio, her voice cutting through the chaos with surprising calm. The voice of someone who had done this more times than anyone present could imagine. "Shaw, I need 30 seconds of heavy suppressive fire into the canopy. Doesn't need to be accurate. Just needs to be loud and make them keep their heads down." Shaw looked at her from his position behind a tree 20 meters away. Even in the chaos, even with people bleeding and dying, he registered something in her voice. Absolute certainty that made him pause, that made him really look at the woman who had been invisible to him for 6 months. "Ashford, what are you planning?" "Sir, I can neutralize the snipers, but I need covering fire to reposition, and I need everyone to shut up and let me work. Can you give me that?" Something in her eyes made Shaw realize he was looking at someone different from the quiet operator who had been on his team for half a year. This was someone else, someone dangerous. "How many snipers?" 8 positions, all elevated, overlapping fields of fire, professional setup. "And you think you can take out 8 snipers by yourself?" Victoria met his gaze without flinching, without doubt, without hesitation. "I know I can, sir. I just need you to trust me." Before Shaw could respond, Holloway's voice came over the radio, weak from blood loss but steady, the voice of a man who had seen enough combat to know what mattered and what didn't. Do what she says, Lieutenant. Trust her. Shaw looked at Holloway propped against his log, pale from blood loss, but still coherent, still sharp, still the backbone of institutional knowledge that had kept young SEALs alive for decades. Master Chief, she's never even fired a shot in combat with us. Why should I trust her now? Because I know who she really is. And if she says she can do it, then she can do it. Trust me, Lieutenant. I've never steered you wrong. The weight of experience hung in those words. All those years of combat, all those years of reading people, all those years of knowing when to trust and when to doubt. Shaw made his decision. All elements, suppressive fire into the canopy on my mark. Sustain for 30 seconds, then cease fire on my command. Ashford is going to work. The team responded with the trained efficiency of professionals. Rifles came up. Magazines were checked. Eyes found target areas in the branches above. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 6 SEALs opened up simultaneously, pouring automatic fire into the trees above. It wasn't aimed. They couldn't see targets to aim at. But that didn't matter. The point was volume. The point was noise. The point was making 8 enemy snipers duck their heads and pause their shooting long enough for Victoria to reposition. And that 30-second pause was all she needed. Victoria moved fast and low, relocating 40 meters to the right, where a slight rise combined with a fallen tree created a natural shooting position with excellent elevation and concealment. She dropped prone behind the cover, bringing her Mk-13 up with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed by some higher power. The suppressive fire stopped. The forest went suddenly eerily quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears and the labored breathing of wounded men. Victoria controlled her breathing, let her heart rate drop from the sprint, entered that state of focused calm that separated good snipers from exceptional ones. That place where the world narrowed to the space between crosshairs and target, where everything else faded away, became irrelevant, ceased to exist. Her scope came up. She found the first target, and somewhere deep inside her, the weapon that Victoria Ashford had tried so hard to bury woke up and remembered what it was made for. The wolf had come to Montana. He had brought his pack. He had killed her mentor, tortured him, made him suffer before the end. And now finally, after 2 years of hunting and waiting and wondering, Victoria was going to make him pay. Her finger found the trigger, and the hunt began. To be continued in part 2. 12 minutes of hell. The first shot split the silence like a thunderclap from God himself. Victoria's Mk-13 kicked against her shoulder with familiar force. Through her scope, she watched the bullet travel its invisible path across 342 meters of forest air, threading through a gap in the foliage no wider than a man's fist. The round found its target with surgical precision. Through her scope, Victoria saw nothing for a heartbeat. Then a figure pitched forward from the concealed platform, arms windmilling in a desperate attempt to grab something, anything that might stop the inevitable fall. The body tumbled through branches that had hidden him so perfectly, crashing through foliage and snapping limbs, hitting the forest floor 38 meters below with a sound that made everyone flinch. 1 down, 7 to go. Victoria was already moving before the echo of her shot faded. She slid backward from her position low and fast, relocating 30 meters to the left, where a cluster of large rocks provided excellent cover while maintaining good fields of fire into the canopy. Never fire twice from the same position. Fundamental sniper doctrine drilled into her until it was reflex, until it was instinct, until it was as natural as breathing. The remaining enemy snipers had gone quiet. They knew now that someone was hunting them, someone who could see through their camouflage, someone who could thread bullets through gaps that should have been impossible, someone dangerous. But silence worked both ways. Victoria settled into her new position, scope up, scanning with patient precision. The forest seemed empty, nothing moving, no targets visible. But she knew they were there. She had counted 8 positions before the shooting started, tracked muzzle flashes and bullet impacts, built a mental map of where each enemy sniper had to be based on their fields of fire. 7 targets remaining. 11 minutes until Mercer bled out, according to Dr. Brennan's desperate estimate. Her scope swept across the canopy in systematic arcs, left to right, low to high, searching for the anomalies that would betray a hidden position. a shadow that fell wrong, a branch that bent under human weight, the geometric regularity of man-made equipment against organic growth. There, 2 o'clock, 42 meters up. A thick branch that could support a prone shooter with enough foliage for concealment, but gaps that allowed fields of fire toward the team's position. She couldn't see the shooter directly, but she could see where he had to be. Victoria watched that position with absolute stillness, becoming part of the landscape, her camouflaged form blending with rocks and shadows until she was just another element of the forest floor. Patient as stone, still as death. 30 seconds passed, 60, 90, then movement. Just a few inches, but the branch shifted slightly under redistributed weight. Someone was up there shifting position, trying to get a better angle on the seals below, trying to find the shooter who had killed his teammate. Victoria's scope was already on the spot. She watched, waited, saw a gap in the foliage open for just a fraction of a second as branches moved under the sniper's adjustment. In that fraction of a second, she squeezed. The round punched through the gap and found flesh. Through her scope, she saw the impact. Center mass, exactly where it needed to be. The figure jerked violently, then toppled forward, tumbling through the canopy in that terrible slow-motion way that falling bodies always seem to have. 2 down, 6 to go. Shaw's voice came over the radio heavy with disbelief and something approaching awe. Ashford, what the hell? How are you finding them? Victoria didn't answer. Talking wasted time, wasted focus. Could give away position to enemies who were now desperately trying to locate her. She let her rifle do the talking, let her actions speak louder than any words could. She relocated again, moving 15 meters to higher ground where she could see more of the canopy. Her movements were fluid, economical, burning minimum energy while covering maximum distance. Every step placed with care, every motion designed to minimize noise and visibility. Third target, 3 o'clock, 35 meters up. Range approximately 290 meters. This one was smart. He hadn't fired since her first shot, hadn't moved, was using excellent camouflage and staying absolutely still. Professional discipline that would have made him nearly impossible to spot for a conventional shooter. But Victoria wasn't a conventional shooter. She watched the position for a full minute patient as a spider waiting for prey, studying the pattern of light and shadow, analyzing the way the branches moved in the slight breeze that stirred the upper canopy, looking for the thing that didn't belong, and then she saw it. A scope glint, tiny, almost imperceptible. Just a momentary flash as the enemy sniper moved his rifle a fraction of an inch and sunlight caught the objective lens for a split second. That split second was a death sentence. Victoria tracked the position, waiting for confirmation. The sniper shifted again, just millimeters, adjusting his aim toward where he thought she might be hiding. Another glint, brief as a firefly's flash. The trigger broke clean. The rifle spoke. The round crossed 290 meters of forest air and found its mark. Through her scope, she watched the platform shudder as the body went limp, then saw the rifle fall first, tumbling end over end through the branches, followed by the shooter himself. 3 down, 5 to go. 9 minutes until Mercer died. Colt Hensley's voice came over the radio, transformed from the panicked screaming of minutes earlier into something approaching reverent whisper. My God, who is she? Holloway's response was weak but steady, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had known the truth all along. She's what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones, Hensley. Now shut up and let her work. Victoria allowed herself a fraction of a second to feel the familiar rhythm of the hunt. Then she pushed it aside. Satisfaction was for later. Right now, 5 targets remained, and every second that passed was a second closer to losing Mercer. She moved again, circling wide to approach the remaining positions from an unexpected angle. The enemy would be expecting her to continue shooting from the eastern side of the engagement area. They would be watching that direction, adjusting their positions to face the threat they thought they understood. She would come from the north instead. The relocation took 90 seconds. 90 seconds of silent movement through undergrowth that would have made noise under less skilled feet. 90 seconds of controlled breathing and careful footwork and absolute focus on the task at hand. When she settled into her new position, she had clear sight lines to three of the remaining platforms. The angle was different now, unexpected. The enemy snipers were oriented toward her previous position, their attention focused on the wrong part of the forest. Fourth target, 12 o'clock, 45 meters up, range 380 meters. Victoria acquired the target in her scope and felt her blood turn to ice. The shooter was a woman, young, maybe mid-20s, visible for just a moment as she adjusted her position on the platform. Dark hair pulled back, sharp features, the same lean, efficient build that Victoria saw in her own mirror every morning. For 3 seconds, Victoria couldn't move. The woman in Syria, the photographs, the little girl who would grow up without a mother because Victoria had done her job with mechanical efficiency. This woman could be anyone, could have anyone waiting for her at home, could be a mother, a daughter, a sister, a person with a life and a story, and people who loved her. Victoria's finger hovered over the trigger, unable to press. 3 seconds, 4, 5, a lifetime in combat, an eternity when every second meant more blood leaking out of Declan Mercer's chest. The flashback came without warning the way it always did, a sensory memory so vivid it overlaid reality, like a double-exposed photograph. The smell of desert dust, the weight of a different rifle against her shoulder. The face of a woman in her scope features sharp and clear in the morning light. Syria. 2 years ago. The target she had been hunting for 3 weeks. The shot had been perfect. 812 meters. Light crosswind from the east. The woman had never known death was coming. And afterward, when they processed the target's belongings, Victoria had found the photographs. A little girl with dark hair and darker eyes. Maybe 3 years old. Laughing in one picture, sleeping in another, held in the arms of the woman Victoria had just killed. That was the mission that broke her. Not the killing itself, but the realization of what she had become. A weapon without conscience. A tool that destroyed lives without considering the lives she destroyed. The woman in her scope was moving now, bringing her rifle around, scanning for the threat that had killed 3 of her teammates. And Holloway's voice cut through the memory like a blade. "Ashford, you still with us?" Victoria blinked, forced herself back to the present, back to the forest, back to the 5 remaining targets and the teammate bleeding out on the ground below. "I'm here, Master Chief." "Good, because Mercer's got maybe 7 minutes and we've still got bad guys in those trees. Whatever you're thinking about, whatever's in your head, push it aside. You can deal with it later. Right now, we need you focused." All those years of experience packed into those words. All those years of understanding what it meant to carry weight and still do the job. All those years of wisdom from a man who had seen the same ghosts she saw and found a way to keep functioning. That woman up there, Holloway continued, his voice steady, despite the pain that had to be consuming him. She chose to be here, chose to take up arms against American operators, chose to try to kill your teammates, your friends, the people who depend on you. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. "You're not a murderer, Ashford. You're not a weapon. You're a professional who makes impossible choices so that other people don't have to. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of." The woman in her scope was bringing her rifle to bear now, the barrel swinging toward the team's position. In seconds, she would have a clear shot at Shaw, or Hensley, or Brennan still working desperately to keep Mercer alive. Sully Graves taught you everything you know, and the most important thing he taught you was this: hesitation kills. Not just you, everyone depending on you. Sully, her mentor, the man Viktor Volkov had killed 2 years ago. Don't let hesitation take Mercer too. Don't let it take Shaw or Hensley or Brennan. Don't let it take me. Victoria's finger found the trigger. The woman in her scope was almost on target now, her rifle steadying her eye, finding her scope. Victoria fired. The shot was clean. Center mass. The woman jerked once, and then was still, her body slumping over the branch that had been her platform before, sliding off and falling through the canopy. 4 down, 4 to go. Victoria didn't let herself feel anything. Not relief, not regret, not the familiar weight of taking another life. She pushed it all aside, locked it in the box with the rest, and kept moving. Later. She would deal with it later. Dr. Avery Brennan's voice came over the radio tight with controlled panic. She's got 6 minutes on Mercer. Maybe less. His pressure's dropping, and I'm running out of options. 6 minutes, 4 targets, 90 seconds per target. Victoria moved again fast, but controlled, seeking a new position that would give her angles on the remaining platforms. The enemy snipers had gone completely silent now, no longer returning fire, no longer moving. They were either extremely well hidden or trying to slip away while they still could. She wouldn't let them slip away. The fifth target was trying to climb down from his platform. Victoria spotted him 15 meters above the ground, moving as fast as he could while maintaining 3 points of contact on the massive pine trunk. He had abandoned his elevated position and was trying to escape on foot. Bad tactics. In his rush to flee, he had made himself completely visible against the tree bark, a dark shape against rough, brown wood. Impossible to miss. Victoria didn't miss. The shot caught him center mass, and his grip on the tree failed instantly. He fell the remaining 15 meters, hitting branches on the way down, landing with a heavy thump that echoed through the suddenly quiet forest. 5 down, 3 to go. Shaw's voice on the radio urgent. Ashford, we've got movement on the ground. 2 enemy personnel moving east approximately 450 meters out. They're running. The remaining shooters had abandoned their positions entirely. They were fleeing through the forest, trying to put distance between themselves and the nightmare that was systematically killing their team. Victoria was already repositioning, moving to where she would have line of sight on the eastern approaches. She found a position behind a fallen tree, dropped prone, scope up, scanning. Found them. 2 figures in camouflage gear running through the forest at full sprint. Not using cover, not thinking tactically, just running. Pure animal flight from a predator they couldn't see and couldn't fight. Range 520 meters. Moving targets. Scattered vegetation between her position and theirs. Difficult shot, but Victoria had made worse. She tracked the first runner, calculated his speed at approximately 6 meters per second across rough terrain, led him by a full meter to account for bullet travel time, compensated for the slight crosswind that was stronger at ground level than it had been shooting into the canopy. The rifle kicked. The runner went down hard, tumbling forward with momentum, his weapon skittering away across the forest floor. 6 down, 2 to go. The last runner saw his companion fall. He looked back in terror, saw nothing but empty forest behind him, and ran faster. Fear made him stupid. He was sprinting in a straight line, following an old game trail, not zigzagging, not using available cover. Fatal mistake. Victoria tracked him, watching his pattern, calculating the intercept point. He was increasing range now, pushing past 580 meters, approaching the edge of her effective range in these conditions. She compensated for the increased distance for the wind, for the slight uphill angle as he fled toward higher ground. The math was complex. Range 1, elevation, temperature, humidity, the target's speed and direction. But she didn't think about it consciously anymore. It was intuitive, instinctive. The product of thousands of shots fired over years of relentless training. Smooth press, perfect release. The Mk-13 spoke one last time. 600 meters away, the last enemy sniper stumbled, took 3 more steps on pure momentum, then collapsed face first into the ferns. 7 down, 1 to go. Wait, 1 to go. Victoria remained in position, scope scanning, replaying the engagement in her mind. She had counted 8 platforms during her initial assessment. 8 snipers. She had eliminated 7. Where was the 8th? Her scope swept the tree line with renewed urgency, searching for the position she had missed, the platform she hadn't spotted, the shooter she hadn't accounted for. And then she saw him, 600 meters away at the edge of the engagement area, a figure standing beside a massive pine, not hidden in the branches, but standing on the ground, watching her through what had to be a spotting scope. Their eyes met across the distance. Victoria through her rifle scope, the figure through his optic, and he smiled. Viktor Volkov, the wolf himself. He was older than she had imagined. 52 years old, his dossier had said. Gray hair cut military short, face weathered by decades of operating in harsh environments. But even at this distance, she could see the cold intelligence in his eyes, the predator recognizing a fellow predator. He raised one hand in a slow, deliberate salute, Russian style, palm out. the gesture of a professional acknowledging a worthy opponent. Then he turned and began walking into the forest. Casual, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. Victoria adjusted her aim, leading him calculating the shot. 612 meters. Moving target. He was good, she could tell by the way he moved, but she was better. She could take him. End this. Finish what she had started 2 years ago when she first began hunting the ghost who had killed her mentor. Her finger found the trigger, and Volkov stopped. He turned his head, looking back at her position, as if he knew exactly where she was hidden. That smile again. Knowing. Challenging. He called out something she couldn't hear across the distance, but she could read his lips clearly enough. Not today, but soon. Then he was moving again, disappearing into the thick forest, with the easy grace of a man who had been evading pursuit for 3 decades. Victoria fired. The round crossed 600 meters of forest and struck Volkov in the left shoulder, spinning him half around. She saw the impact through her scope, saw him stagger, saw blood spray from the wound. But he didn't fall. The wolf caught himself against a tree trunk, looked back at her one more time with an expression that might have been surprise or might have been respect, and then vanished into the wilderness. Victoria searched for him through her scope, sweeping the tree line, looking for movement, for any sign of where he had gone. But the forest had swallowed him completely, wounded, but alive, still out there. Shaw's voice on the radio, concerned. Ashford, what's happening? Report. Victoria kept her scope on the tree line for another 30 seconds, watching, waiting, but Volkov was gone. Lieutenant, we have a situation. What kind of situation? Victoria lowered her rifle, her mind already processing the implications of what she had just seen. There was a 9th man, the commander, Viktor Volkov, former Spetsnaz, currently operating as a mercenary sniper trainer. He's the one who set up this ambush. She paused. I hit him. Shoulder wound. But he's still mobile. He's gone. Silence on the radio. Then Shaw's voice, harder now. He got away. For now, but he's wounded, and he's not running blind. Victoria's eyes tracked the direction Volkov had disappeared. Before I spotted him, I saw one of the runners heading toward a structure approximately 800 meters northeast of here. I think there are hostages. I think that's what this whole operation was about. Holloway's voice weak but sharp. The wolf. You're telling me the wolf was here in Montana, and there are hostages? Yes, Master Chief. The Henderson family. The civilians who went missing from their cabin 2 weeks ago. I think Volkov's been holding them, using them for something. Using them for what? Victoria thought about the way Volkov had smiled at her, the way he had waited for her to see him, the way he had challenged her across 600 meters of forest. For me, she said quietly. This whole thing was designed to draw me out. The ambush, the hostages, all of it. He wanted me to find him. Why? Victoria thought about Sully Graves, about the photographs of his tortured body, about what Volkov must have learned from him before the end. Because I'm the one who's been hunting him. Because I'm the one who got close enough to almost catch him in Syria. Because he wants to finish what he started when he killed my mentor. The forest was quiet now, except for the sounds of Brennan working on Mercer, the wounded groaning softly, and the heavy breathing of SEALs who had just stared death in the face and lived. Ashford. Shaw's voice was steady now, the voice of a commander making tactical decisions. QRF is 15 minutes out. What do you recommend? Victoria looked toward the northeast, toward the cabin, toward Volkov. Sir, those hostages are running out of time. Volkov knows his position is compromised. He knows we have reinforcements coming. If those people are still alive, they won't be for long. So what do you suggest? Victoria shouldered her rifle and began moving toward the team's position. I suggest you secure this location and wait for QRF. Get Mercer and Holloway stabilized. Set up a perimeter. And you? Victoria's voice was calm, certain, the voice of someone who had made this kind of decision before. I'm going after Volkov. I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to bring those hostages home. To be continued in Part 3. Hunting the wolf. Victoria reached the team's position to find controlled chaos. Dr. Avery Brennan was working on Mercer with the focused intensity of someone who refused to let death win. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting the chest seal that was keeping air from collapsing his lung, monitoring his breathing, preparing a second IV line that would replace some of the blood he had lost. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool mountain air. "His pressure's stabilizing," Brennan said without looking up. "The chest seal is holding. He's not out of danger, but he's not dying in the next 10 minutes either." Holloway was propped against a fallen log, his face pale but his eyes sharp. One of the team members had applied a proper pressure bandage to his right shoulder, and the bleeding had slowed to a manageable seep. His left hand rested on the pistol at his hip, ready despite his wound. Shaw was coordinating with the incoming QRF, his voice steady, despite everything that had happened in the past 12 minutes. The helicopters were 15 minutes out now, close enough to matter far enough to feel like an eternity. And Colt Hensley was staring at Victoria like he had never seen her before, which in a way he hadn't. The woman who walked out of the forest was not the same quiet operator who had spent 6 months being invisible. This woman moved differently, carried herself differently, had eyes that swept the tree line with predatory alertness, cataloging threats and calculating responses with every step. "Ashford." Shaw stepped away from his radio, his expression a complex mixture of gratitude and confusion. 7 confirmed kills in under 12 minutes. I don't even know what to say. "Don't say anything yet, Lieutenant. The mission isn't over." "The hostages." "Yes, sir. The Henderson family. 3 civilians. Father, mother, teenage daughter. They've been missing for 2 weeks. I believe Volkov has been holding them at a cabin approximately 800 meters northeast of here." Shaw processed this information with the quick efficiency of a combat commander. "And Volkov himself. Wounded. I hit him in the shoulder. But he's still mobile, still dangerous. He's either heading to the cabin to eliminate the hostages and escape, or he's setting up another ambush." "Which do you think?" Victoria considered the question. She had spent 2 years studying Viktor Volkov, learning his patterns, understanding his methods, the way he thought, the way he moved, the way he turned every situation to his advantage. "Both," she said finally. "He'll try to use the hostages as leverage. And if that doesn't work, he'll try to kill me. Either way, those civilians are running out of time." Shaw looked at his wounded team, at Mercer barely stable, at Holloway pale from blood loss, at the operators who had just survived an ambush that should have killed them all. "QRF is 15 minutes out. We wait for reinforcements, assault the cabin with full support." "With respect, sir, we don't have 15 minutes. Volkov knows we're coming. He knows his position is compromised. Every second we wait is a second he uses to prepare, or to kill those hostages and disappear. So what do you suggest you go alone into an unknown hostile environment after a wounded but still dangerous target?" Victoria met his gaze without flinching. "I've spent 2 years hunting Viktor Volkov. I know how he thinks. I know how he operates. I know his patterns and his preferences and his weaknesses." She paused. "If anyone can find him and neutralize him before he kills those hostages, it's me. And if you're wrong, if he's waiting for you, then he'll learn the same lesson his team just learned." Shaw hesitated, looking toward Holloway for guidance. The old Master Chief was watching Victoria with an expression that mixed concern with something that looked almost like pride. "Let her go, Lieutenant," Holloway said quietly. "She's the best chance those hostages have. The best chance any of us have of ending this properly." Shaw was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Go. But you stay on comms. You report everything. And if you get into trouble, you call for backup immediately. The second QRF arrives, we're coming after you." "Understood, sir." Victoria turned toward the northeast, toward the cabin, toward Volkov, and then Colt Hensley's voice stopped her. "Ashford, wait." She turned to find him standing awkwardly, his rifle held loosely at his side, his expression wrestling with something that looked like shame. "I owe you an apology. The things I said, the jokes, calling you the mute." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong. About all of it. You just saved every single one of us, and I spent 6 months treating you like you didn't belong here." Victoria studied him for a moment, the young operator who had been so quick to dismiss her, who had questioned her competence behind her back for half a year, who had nearly gotten himself killed today by panicking under fire. He wasn't a bad person, just young, just arrogant, just making the same mistakes that young, arrogant operators had been making since the beginning of warfare. "You weren't wrong to wonder about me, Hensley. In this community, you prove yourself through performance. I understand that. She paused. But next time, maybe wait until you've seen someone perform before you judge them. Hensley nodded, accepting the rebuke. Yes, ma'am, I will. And Hensley, when the QRF arrives, you make sure Mercer gets on that medical bird first. He's critical. You do whatever it takes to keep him alive until proper care arrives. I will, I promise. Victoria turned and disappeared into the forest. The hunt had begun. She moved through the trees like a ghost, her footsteps silent on the carpet of pine needles, her body flowing around obstacles with practiced grace. 800 meters to the cabin. 800 meters of forest that could hide any number of threats. But Victoria was not afraid. She had spent 2 years operating alone in hostile territory, 2 years of solo missions where backup was hours away and survival depended entirely on her own skills. This forest, dangerous as it was, felt almost familiar compared to the mountains of Afghanistan or the deserts of Syria or the urban jungles of a dozen other countries where she had hunted and killed and survived. The wolf was out there somewhere, wounded, watching, planning, but so was she. 400 meters from the cabin, Victoria found the first sign of Volkov's passage. Blood on a fern leaf, fresh and red in the afternoon light. He was heading toward the cabin, just as she had expected. The shoulder wound was bleeding freely now, leaving a trail that even a novice tracker could follow. He knew she would follow. He was counting on it. 300 meters out, she began to hear voices. Faint, carried on the wind, too distant to make out words, but clear enough to confirm that the cabin was occupied. Multiple speakers, at least one of them female. The hostages were still alive. For now. 200 meters. Victoria slowed her approach, moving from cover to cover, scanning every shadow for threats. The cabin came into view through the trees, a rustic structure built from logs and stone. The kind of wilderness retreat that wealthy families used for summer vacations and hunting trips. Smoke rose from the chimney. Light glowed behind curtained windows. Someone was inside. Victoria found a position behind a massive fallen tree 50 meters from the cabin's front door. She brought up her scope and began a systematic assessment. 2 guards visible, both armed with rifles positioned at the front and side of the building. Professional posture, alert, scanning their sectors with the discipline of trained operatives. Blood trail led past them and into the cabin itself. Volkov was inside, movement behind one window, a silhouette that looked too small to be an adult. The daughter. Victoria keyed her radio, speaking barely above a whisper. Shaw, I have eyes on the cabin. 2 guards visible, probably more inside, confirming at least one hostage, possibly all 3. Volkov is inside, I can see his blood trail, moving to engage. Shaw's voice came back tight with concern. Copy that. QRF is 10 minutes out. Can you hold until then? Negative. Guards are too alert. They know something's wrong. If I wait, they'll either move the hostages or eliminate them. Understood. Be careful, Ashford. Always, Lieutenant. Victoria unslung her MK-13 and prepared for the assault. 2 guards at range, then close quarters work inside the cabin. Not ideal, but manageable. She acquired the first guard in her scope. 53 meters, stationary target, no wind at this range. The mathematics were simple. She fired, he dropped. The second guard was already moving when she shifted her aim, reacting to the sound of the shot with trained reflexes. He was diving toward the cabin door, trying to reach cover, trying to alert whoever was inside. He didn't make it. Victoria's second shot caught him mid-dive, spinning him around before he crumpled to the ground 3 feet from the door. Inside the cabin, chaos erupted. A woman screaming, a man shouting orders in Russian, the sound of furniture being overturned, of people moving with desperate urgency. Victoria covered the distance to the cabin at a dead sprint. 50 meters of open ground. 5 seconds of exposure. 5 seconds where anyone at a window could have ended her. No one did. She hit the front door with her shoulder, bursting through the frame into the dim interior of the cabin. Her handgun was up now, the MK-13, too long for close quarters. She swept the room in a practiced arc, identifying threats and non-threats in the space between heartbeats. 3 hostages huddled in the corner. Father, mother, teenage daughter. Terrified but alive. The Hendersons, the family that had been missing for 2 weeks. 1 guard near the back door reaching for his weapon. Victoria fired twice. He went down. Another guard emerging from a side room rifle already raised. She dove sideways, rolling behind a heavy wooden table as rounds punched through the space where she had been standing. Splinters exploded from the floor. The daughter screamed. Victoria came up firing two shots that caught the guard center mass. He staggered backward, hit the wall, slid down with a look of surprise frozen on his face. The cabin went quiet except for the sobbing of the hostages and the ringing in Victoria's ears. Clear. She breathed more to herself than anyone else. Main room clear. But where was Volkov? The blood trail led deeper into the cabin toward a back room. A bedroom maybe, or a storage area. The door was closed. No sound came from beyond it. Victoria approached the door with her pistol raised, every sense on high alert. Volkov was wounded but not disabled. He had decades of combat experience. He had killed her mentor. He was more dangerous now cornered than he had been in the forest. She reached for the door handle, and a voice spoke from behind her. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me." Victoria spun, bringing her pistol around. Volkov stood in the doorway of a closet she had cleared only seconds ago. He must have been hiding behind the coats behind the clutter, waiting for her to pass. His left arm hung useless at his side, blood soaking through a makeshift bandage. But his right hand held a pistol, and that pistol was pointed directly at her chest. "Your approach was excellent," he continued, his English accented but fluent. "I almost missed you twice. But I have been doing this for 3 decades, and I know when a predator is stalking me." Victoria's mind raced through options. He had the drop on her. If she moved, if she tried to bring her weapon to bear, he would fire. If she stayed still, she was at his mercy. "How did you know I would follow?" she asked, buying time, looking for any advantage. "Because I know who you are, Victoria Ashford. I have known for 2 years. Since Syria. Since you almost caught me in Damascus." A chill ran down Victoria's spine. He knew her name, knew her history, had been tracking her even as she hunted him. "You killed Sully Graves." "Yes, he was good. One of the best I have faced. But in the end, he made a mistake." Volkov's voice held no remorse, only the cold assessment of a professional discussing his work. He trusted someone he should not have trusted, and that trust cost him his life. "He was my mentor, my teacher. He made me who I am." "I know. That is why I took my time with him, so that he would have time to tell me about you, about his star pupil, about the woman he said was the finest sniper he had ever trained." Victoria felt rage building in her chest, hot and dangerous. Sully had been tortured, forced to give up information about her, made to betray his own student before he died. "He spoke of you with such pride," Volkov continued, "even at the end, even when he knew he was going to die. He said you would come for me. He said you would hunt me down and make me pay for what I had done. He was right. Perhaps, but not today." Volkov's finger tightened on the trigger, and Victoria moved. She threw herself sideways away from the line of fire as Volkov's pistol barked once, twice, 3 times. Rounds punched through the air where she had been standing, shattering a window behind her. She hit the floor, rolling, came up with her own weapon raised. They fired simultaneously. Victoria felt the impact in her left side, a hammer blow that knocked her backward. Volkov staggered as her round caught him in the right thigh, his leg buckling beneath him. They both went down. Victoria's vision swam, pain radiating from her side. She looked down, saw blood spreading across her tactical vest. The round had caught her just below the edge of her body armor, punching through flesh and muscle. Bad, but not immediately fatal. Across the room, Volkov was struggling to rise his wounded leg, refusing to support his weight. His pistol had skittered away when he fell. He was reaching for it with his good arm fingers, straining toward the weapon. Victoria raised her own pistol, aimed at center mass, and hesitated. She could end it now. One shot and Viktor Volkov would be dead. The man who had killed her mentor. The man who had tortured Sully Graves for information. The man who had orchestrated this entire operation just to draw her out and destroy her. One shot and it would all be over. But Sully's voice echoed in her memory. Not from the torture, not from the photographs of his broken body, from years earlier when she was still learning, still becoming the person she would be. A good sniper knows when to take the shot. A great sniper knows when not to. Volkov's fingers closed around his pistol. He was bringing it up, aiming at her. his eyes filled with the desperate determination of a man who knew he was about to die, but intended to take his enemy with him. Victoria fired. The round struck the floor an inch from Volkov's hand, sending splinters and stone chips into his fingers. He cried out, dropping the pistol reflexively. In the second it took him to recover, Victoria crossed the distance between them. She kicked the pistol away, then drove her knee into his wounded shoulder. Volkov screamed, his body going rigid with agony. Victoria pressed her own pistol against his forehead. "Give me one reason," she breathed. "One reason not to pull this trigger." Volkov looked up at her, his face twisted with pain, but his eyes still sharp, still calculating, still dangerous. "Because you are not like me," he said quietly. "Because Graves taught you to be better than this, better than simple revenge. You don't know anything about what Sully taught me. I know everything about what he taught you. He told me at the end. He told me about the woman he had created, the weapon who was also human, the killer who still had a conscience." Volkov's lips twisted into something that might have been a smile. He was very proud of that. Proud that he had made you dangerous without making you a monster. Victoria's finger trembled on the trigger. "He said you would be the one to stop me. Not because you were the best shot, although you are. Not because you were the most relentless, although you are that too. But because you would know when to pull the trigger and when to hold fire. Because you would understand the difference between justice and murder. Killing you would be justice. Would it, or would it just be revenge?" Volkov's eyes held hers. "There is a difference, Victoria Ashford. And you know it? That is why you have not pulled the trigger yet. That is why you are hesitating." Victoria thought about Sully, about the photographs, about the 2 years she had spent hunting this man, driven by rage and grief and the desperate need for vengeance. She thought about the woman she had killed in Syria, the mother with the 3-year-old daughter, the person she had reduced to a target, a statistic, a body cooling in the desert sun. She thought about who she wanted to be, who Sully had taught her to be, who she had been trying to become in 6 months of silence and patience and desperate hope. Victoria pulled the pistol back from Volkov's forehead. "No," she said quietly. "You don't get to die a soldier's death. You don't get to become a martyr for whatever cause you think you're serving." She reached for the zip ties on her belt, began securing his wrists behind his back despite his struggles. "You're going to stand trial. You're going to face justice for everything you've done. Every operator you've killed. Every family you've destroyed. The whole world is going to see exactly what you are." Volkov laughed, blood staining his teeth. "You think that makes you better than me? You think showing mercy makes you the hero?" Victoria finished securing his restraints, then leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, but it makes me different from you. And that's enough." She stood, leaving him bound on the floor, and turned to the hostages. The Henderson family was still huddled in the corner, the father's arms wrapped protectively around his wife and daughter. They stared at Victoria with wide eyes, unable to fully process what they had just witnessed. "You're safe now," Victoria said, her voice softening. "My name is Petty Officer Ashford. I'm with the United States Navy. Help is on the way." The mother began to cry. The daughter buried her face in her father's chest. The father just stared at Victoria like she was something out of a dream. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you. We thought we were going to die. You're going to be fine. All of you. The nightmare is over." Victoria keyed her radio. "Shaw, this is Ashford. Cabin is secure. All 3 hostages are alive and unharmed. 4 enemy personnel neutralized. And I have Victor Volkov in custody." Silence on the radio. Then Shaw's voice heavy with disbelief. "Say again, Ashford. Did you say you have Volkov in custody alive?" "Affirmative, Lieutenant. He's wounded and restrained. Ready for extraction and transfer to appropriate authorities." Another pause. Then Holloway's voice, weak but filled with something that sounded like wonder. "She did it. She actually did it." The QRF helicopters arrived 10 minutes later, their rotors beating the air like war drums. Medical teams rushed to treat the wounded. Security teams fanned out to secure the perimeter. Victoria stood apart from the chaos, watching as Volkov was loaded onto a helicopter in chains. His eyes found hers across the clearing, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition, respect. the acknowledgement of one predator for another. Then the helicopter lifted off, carrying him away to face justice for 30 years of blood and death. Dr. Brennan walked beside Mercer's stretcher, her hand still monitoring his vitals. She caught Victoria's eye as they loaded him onto the medical bird and gave a single nod. He was going to make it. The chest seal had held. The bleeding had stopped. Declan Mercer would live to fight another day. The Henderson family was loaded onto a separate helicopter. The father caught Victoria's eye as he climbed aboard, his arm wrapped protectively around his teenage daughter. He mouthed two words that needed no sound to understand. "Thank you." The mother was still crying, clutching a blanket one of the medics had given her, but she managed a small wave before the door closed. 3 lives saved. 3 people who would go home to their normal lives because Victoria had made the hard choices. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. Shaw approached a bandage wrapped around a minor wound on his arm that Victoria hadn't even noticed he had received. "Ashford, I don't know how to begin thanking you. You saved all of us today. The team, the hostages, everyone. Just doing my job, Lieutenant. It was more than that, and we both know it." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The things you did out there, the shots you made, the way you handled yourself. I've never seen anything like it. None of us have." Victoria didn't know what to say. 6 months of silence, of hiding, of trying to be ordinary. And now this. "The recommendation for your Navy Cross is already being drafted. But I want you to know, whatever happens with the brass, you've earned the respect of every person on this team, and that includes me. Thank you, Lieutenant. That means more than you know." Holloway limped over, supported by one of the QRF medics. His right arm was in a sling now, but his left hand reached out to grip Victoria's shoulder. "He's smiling right now," he said quietly. "Wherever he is. I guarantee it." Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes, the first she had allowed herself since the shooting started. "You think so?" "I know so. Sully Graves spent his whole life training operators, hundreds of them over the years. But you were special. You were the one he talked about when he thought no one was listening. The one he said would be better than him someday." Holloway squeezed her shoulder. "Today you proved him right." 1 week later, Victoria stood before a row of graves at Arlington National Cemetery. The ceremony had been simple. A Navy Cross for conspicuous gallantry, handshakes from admirals and generals who had read the classified reports of what happened in Montana, quiet acknowledgement from operators who understood what it meant to do what she had done. But this was the moment that mattered. Sully Graves' headstone was simple. Name, rank, dates. A brief mention of the medals he had earned in a career that spanned 3 decades. Nothing about Shadow Unit. Nothing about the missions he had led. Nothing about the students he had trained, or the lives he had saved, or the difference he had made. Just stone and silence and memory. "I did it," Victoria said quietly. "I found him. I stopped him." The wind stirred the leaves of nearby trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler was practicing taps. "I almost killed him, Sully. I had the pistol at his forehead. I could have ended it right there." She paused. "But I remembered what you taught me, about the difference between a good sniper and a great one, about knowing when to pull the trigger and when to hold fire." She touched the headstone, feeling the cool marble beneath her fingers. "I don't know if I made the right choice. Maybe killing him would have been justice. Maybe showing mercy was weakness." She shook her head. "But I know you would have wanted me to choose, to decide for myself who I wanted to be. And I chose to be the person you taught me to be." "He would have been proud of you." Victoria turned to find Holloway standing behind her, his arm still in a sling, but his eyes clear and sharp. "I served with Sully in the early days," Holloway said, moving to stand beside her. "Before Shadow Unit, before any of this. He was the best operator I ever knew, and he always said the same thing about the people he trained." "What was that?" "That the goal wasn't to create killers. Any idiot with a rifle can kill. The goal was to create professionals, people who could do the hard things, make the hard choices, and still come home as human beings." Holloway put his good hand on her shoulder. "You did that, Ashford. You did the hardest thing in the world. You had every reason to kill him, and you chose not to. That's not weakness. That's strength." Victoria felt a tear slip down her cheek. She didn't try to stop it. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Master Chief. The killing, the violence, being the person they need me to be when things go wrong. Then don't. She looked at him surprised. You've earned the right to choose Ashford. Whatever you want to do next, whether that's staying with the team or transferring out or leaving the service entirely, you've earned it. No one will question you. No one will judge you. What would you do in my position? Holloway smiled. I'm 58 years old. I've been doing this since before you were born. And I'm still here because I believe in the mission. I believe in protecting people who can't protect themselves. I believe that what we do matters even when it costs us pieces of ourselves. He gestured at the rows of headstones stretching into the distance. But that's my choice. You have to make your own. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. The team will support you, because you've earned that too. Victoria looked at Sully's grave one last time, then at the rows of headstones marking soldiers and sailors and Marines who had given everything in service of something larger than themselves. She thought about the Henderson family safe now, returned to their normal lives because she had been there when they needed her. She thought about Mercer recovering in a hospital bed alive because she had eliminated the threats before it was too late. She thought about the next family that might need saving the next team, that might need backup the next mission, where the quiet professional in the background might be the difference between life and death. I think I want to keep going, she said finally. Not as a weapon, not as a tool for other people to point at targets, but as part of a team, as someone who protects the people around her. Holloway nodded. Then that's what you'll do. They stood in silence for a moment longer, two warriors paying respect to those who had come before. Team 7 is having a debrief tomorrow, Holloway said. Shaw wants everyone there, wants to talk about what happened and what comes next. I'll be there. Good. And Ashford. Yes, Master Chief. Welcome to the team. For real this time. Victoria smiled. The first genuine smile she had allowed herself in years. The sun was setting over Arlington, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The wind carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. Somewhere beyond the hills, a new day was waiting to begin. And Victoria Ashford, the quiet professional who had been hiding in plain sight for 6 months, finally felt like she belonged. The wolf was in custody. The hostages were safe. Her teammates were alive. And somewhere she knew Sully Graves was watching. The hunt was over, but the mission continued. It always would.